So this is resuming the broadcast, Baby Angel Geronimo essay, KhoodeelaarT television channel, Baby Angel Geronimo Manifesto for Animals. The Baby Angel Geronimo Manifesto for Animals, being broadcast by channel KhoodeelaarT television channel, timed at 18:20 hours GMT on Monday, 15th of January 2024. So I was reading about the civil service beating wage freeze by over promoting. Now, the report that has been published on Monday, the 15th of January 2024, about Rochdale So to Tony Blair saying all of those things about asylum being abolished and the United Nations Convention being scrapped may come as a shock to many people who have been outraged by the behavior of Suella Ivila Cruella Fernandez, and before her, Ugly Pretty Patel, and before that, by Stupid Javed. Now look at the lineup. One Pakistani origin, Home Secretary Stupid Javed, followed by an Indian origin, Home Secretary Ugly Patel, followed by another Indian origin, Home Secretary, post holder, Suella Ivila Cruella Fernandez. Now, these people are doing worse from the standpoint of creating racist bogies out of the victims of racism, imperialism, criminality. And looking at the Red Sea, adventures by David Crook Cameron, operating as a foreign secretary as well as the war minister in Sunk Sunak's government, it is quite clear that these people create the desperate situation of asylum, people needing asylum, people seeking to flee their countries, needing to flee their countries. Millions of people are being made homeless. Millions of people are being made desperate to leave their countries in the Gulf areas, in the Red Sea areas where the UK has been used as a tail for the USA attacking the Hamas supporting, Palestine supporting Houthis on behalf of the Zionist state of Israel. So when they talk about the people coming here in small boats or big boats, they completely tell a multiplicity of lies in one phrase, one narrative, which is that they create in the so-called rest of the world. When Tony Blair talks about this island, there is no safe country anywhere for the people seeking asylum or seeking refuge to settle in. The point is to settle in safety in. So Tony Blair was a liar. The Greater Manchester Police have been denying the activities of the groomers. Greater Manchester councils have been denying the activities of the groomers. The Greater Manchester councillors have been denying the activities of the groomers. And despite the fact that Andy Burnham has been credited as having authorized or having asked for the report into the groomers' activities between 2004 to 2013, Andy Burnham himself is a crook and corrupt, dishonest. So the entire kind of layer of local bureaucracy is corrupt. The layer of Whitehall bureaucracy, civil service is corrupt. The layers of the parliament is corrupt. So where do people seeking end of corruption and fair system of government go to turn to? Clearly based on the evidence of Paula Vanels being given a knighthood or given a CBE in 2019, years after she began to whitewash and support the crooks of Fujitsu and harass the innocent postmasters and postmistresses. She was given this honor. There is a corrupt state in the United Kingdom, the corrupt England at every level, every stage. So when baby angel Geronimo was being injected. Baby angel Geronimo was being injected with a false drug that would create a false reading of the test. It wasn't an exceptional thing. It wasn't a one off. It was part and parcel of the norm of the corrupt British state bureaucracy. DEFRA was intending to create a false reading so that it could justify harassing the innocent baby angel Geronimo, just like the post office, fronted by Paula Venels, continued to harass the innocent postmasters and mistresses, so did the engineered by the criminal called Christian evilness middle miss, the so-called thief bat. She confected the lies against baby angel Geronimo in order to justify the attacks on baby angel Geronimo, who was innocent. But they wanted to create the impression that baby angel Geronimo was infected with bovine tuberculosis, which baby angel Geronimo biologically, physically, evidentially we shall be continuing to publish the drafts, international drafts on the Baby Angel Geronimo Manifesto for Animals. And once that draft updating is completed, we shall then publish a draft version of the whole manifesto. And then we shall seek opinions, consultation on the contents and the implications of it from innocent, truthful, fair-minded commentators and respondents and participants. And then we shall publish the first official version from the Khoodeelaar television channel, Baby Angel Geronimo Manifesto for Animals. Now, going back to the civil service corruption, every single part of the civil service in England is corrupt. For example, when on the 4th of November 2014, then Community Secretary Eric the Pickles issued a speech on the floor of the House of Commons in England, in Westminster. He did that on the basis of the report submitted to him by Price Waterhouse Cooper, the accountants company, which had been commissioned by him to do a report on the financial behavior in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council, which was fronted by Lutfur Rahman, who was incumbent in the post of the elected mayor, which post was nullified for 5 years for him by the election commissioner Richard Morey, whose findings published on the 23rd of April 2015 banned Lutfur Rahman and along with him banned Alibor Chaudhry. We shall be updating on the Alibor Chaudhry role as Lutfur Rahman's main advisor, main operational kind of hand in the Tower Hamlets Council. Because Alibor Chaudhry confessed to me in a short statement in Brick Lane when I met him by chance that all these years of his statements on behalf of Lutfur Rahman, that they were telling the truth and they were trying their best about the role being played by Colin Cormack, the criminal, The confession was by Alibar Chaudhry that was all a lie, pack of lies. Alibar Chaudhry confessed that he was lying, he had been lying, Lutfur Rahman had been lying, and all the agents in the network operating in Tower Hamlets in the Bangladeshi demography who had spoken to the question that I had been asking them about Lutfur Rahman's dishonesty and said that Lutfur Rahman had the highest regard for me, that they were lying as well. And they were lying in the knowledge that they intended to lie and there was nothing that could be done to stop them lying because the liar in chief on whose behalf they were lying was still in post as incumbent mayor at the expense of the people of Tower Hamlets, and they would lie on for as long as they could. Their lying stopped on the 23rd of April 2015 after Richard Morey published his ruling saying that Lutfur Rahman had been dishonest and had lied about the second election for the post of mayor held in May 2014. So this was just under a year since the 2014 so-called mayoral election that Lutfur Rahman was exposed as having been a liar who had actually used fraudulent means and corrupt means, and he was completely unreliable, said Richard Morey. In his statement in the House of Commons on the 4th of November 2014, Eric the Pickles used the word medieval monarch. Now, if he knows anything about the demography in Brick Lane in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, if he knew that, he would never have used that word, that phrase at all. Because Lutfur Rahman not only does not come from any description of monarchy, he could not be. And yet, to be compared to the imagery of a medieval monarchy by Eric Pickles shows a multiplicity of idiocy and ignorance on the part of the Pickles, which is why, despite the fact that he appointed the crooked commissioners, Ted Jury completely fucked up the coverage of Lutfur Rahman's kind of incumbency and Lutfur Rahman's kind of stay in the post of mayor. Because Ted Jury became embroiled in a personal kind of war with Lutfur Rahman's press, head of the press relations at the time. And it was a complete diversion. It was a complete diversion because Ted Jury never understood the purpose of a local council existing. Although he did refer to the amount of money that the council had as a budget, as a sum of money to be used or exploited by Lutfur Rahman, Ted Jury never understood why a local council exists or why a local council existed. And he did not ever publish one single report in, let's say, 5 years about the post of mayor being created. And yet here was Ted Jory being cited as the main reporter, of course, a reporter who had to be white. The main reporter, a white reporter, covering the London Borough of Tower Hamlets by all sorts of foreign, other, international, non-Tower Hamlets, non-East London kind of commentators. They used him as a source. When Jory followed a previous reporter employed at the East London idiotizer called Julia Heartless Screwer, that is the Khoodeelaar campaign's name, Julia Heartless Screwer, and became a reporter on a Fleet Street newspaper, Ted Jory became kind of promoted by himself as one of the high stature of a journalist. But Jory was not a journalist of any stature if reporting the truth about Tower Hamlets Borough, Tower Hamlets people, and the corruption built in the Tower Hamlets Council were anything to go by. Because he stayed absolutely away from the corrupt behavior of the council. And it's not surprising because he didn't. Ted Jory didn't come to the East London idiotizer as a journalist, really. He, by his own admissions, had been working in the City of London. And then before coming to the East London idiotizer, Ted Jory worked on a East of England publication, which is connected with the East London idiotizer in some way. So therefore, he was not really connected with the community. He didn't know the actual history of Tower Hamlets at all. And when the Olympic 2012 was being staged, Ted Jory promoted an Indian. Now, in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, the demography doesn't contain a significant, politically significant component that can be called Indian. The demography in Tower Hamlets does contain a very significant proportion of the population is Bangladeshi, or to be more precise, Siloti Bangladeshi. And Ted Jory So if we extrapolate Ted Jury's behavior to the behavior of his counterparts, let's say, operating in areas like Rochdale and other parts of Greater Manchester, we can see how those so-called local reporters would have been behaving exactly the same way as the Rochdale councillors, Rochdale Council, Rochdale part of the Greater Manchester Police, because all of them ignored these girls being raped, gang raped, serially abused, drugged, and all the rest of it. How is it? How is it that for decades, it must have been decades, these girls, well, successive generations of girls, mostly white girls, not all of them white, but in the main, because of the demography, mainly white girls have been subjected to sexual abuse and sexual grooming. And the local councils have turned a blind eye. The local politicians have turned a blind eye. The local members of parliament have turned a blind eye. How is that patriotic? How has that been patriotic when they have been exposing these children to such grotesque violations of their rights and their humanity and destroying their lives? So when Lutfur Rahman became incumbent again in as a result of the ban imposed on him by Richard Morey ending, and he got in following the May 2022 election, I wanted to know from the Labour Party's candidate at the 2010 election at one point, 2010 election that took place in October 2010, which is Abbasuddin alias Halal. Why did they fail? Why did the Labour Party allow Lutfur Rahman to return as a mayor? Again, this was a very short conversation I had in Bishopsgate with Abbasuddin alias Halal, who at times, if he he ran away from the conversation and from any discussion about anything. So I saw him by chance. He was going towards the Liverpool Street side of the road, about to cross Bishop crossing, and I was going north. And I saw him. I was going north to catch a bus. And I asked him why had the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets allowed Lutfur Rahman to return as elected mayor again? Can you believe the answer? Can you believe the answer that Abbasuddin alias Halal gave me? He said it was John Biggs's fault. He said that with John Biggs, Rahman, that was bound to had been the candidate, then Lutfur Rahman would not have won. What a stupid thing to say. Because it's not an individual organizational mess up that Abbasuddin alias Halal was suffering from. It is the entire Labour Party in Tower Hamlets that had failed to understand the impact and the implication of having an elected mayor. There should never have been an elected mayor system. It was bound to be against the Labour Party. The only time it wasn't against the Labour Party was when it was aided by Richard Morey's ruling. If you take away such a ruling, the community, the Bangladeshi demography, the Bangladeshi part of the demography, the electoral demography in Tower Hamlets, is organized in such a way that it is going to produce a result that will favor those who are of Bangladeshi origin, because no other part of the demography in Tower Hamlets is constituted in the way that the Bangladeshis are, because they come from the same kind of very narrow in terms of the regional backgrounds, narrow part, and their social contracts are very narrow indeed. Several collections of villages, if you like, dominate demography in Tower Hamlets. So for that reason, it was a completely anti-democratic kind of outcome that would happen if an elected mayor were created, the post were created. And when anyone such as Lutfur Rahman is the incumbent, no way would a Bangladeshis, normal part of the Bangladeshis in the para, would oppose him, even if they saw that he was being corrupt, he was being dishonest, he was lying, etc., etc., etc. So how did that petition that was filed in the name of the 4 residents of Tower Hamlets, who included one resident who is Ajmal Hussain, how did that happen? It didn't happen because of Ajmal Hussain being dedicated against corruption. It didn't happen that way at all. Because Ajmal Hussain was motivated by a personal grudge against Lutfur Rahman, because of a personal interest based on his restaurant business in Brick Lane being affected by the behavior of Tower Hamlets Council employees. So it was Ajmal Hussain who was motivated by his personal restaurant business. He wasn't motivated by any idea of democracy of accountability, transparency, and he most certainly wasn't motivated by an opposition to corruption, council corruption whatsoever. So people who are not familiar as local residents of long standing, like I have been in Tower Hamlets for more than half a century now, actively doing things for the democracy, for the ethics and morality, etc., that no one else has been doing. If the people are not familiar with the struggles, the battles for democracy in Tower Hamlets, then they will draw the wrong conclusion, false information. They would say that Tower Hamlets is actually dominated by Muslim fundamentalists. It is not. Lutfur Rahman is aligned with the East London Mosque, which is not a fundamentalist place, it is a corrupt. Now, there is a distinction between corruption and fundamentalism. These operatives who control the bureaucracy, the East London Mosque, the London Muslim Centre, these people are corrupt. They are not Islamic. They are corrupt. They are corrupt, not Islamic. So the result is that all these corrupt individuals, who have been aiding and abetting Lutfur Rahman under the banner of Muslim and Islam, etc., are crooks. Which is why they didn't understand why Lutfur Rahman had to be exposed and had to be kind of removed. There was a general consensus that Lutfur Rahman was a crook, fraudulent, liar, and was abusing the position in terms of the financial decisions that were being made. The latest one has been, of course, featuring Shamsul Haq. Now, Shamsul Haq comes from an area, kind of, in terms of the area that I come from. He's not far from an area not far from where I come from. but I never knew him there. I only met Shamsul Haq in the United Kingdom. Now, my meeting with Shamsul Haq only happened once before I left New Road, and once I was trying to save the archives and the documents and records that had been affected by the behavior of Lutfur Rahman and his crooks in the council. Now, on the second occasion, it was a specific promise that Shamsul Haq made to me as the chair he was of the Council of Mosques in Tower Hamlets. He said at the next meeting, and that was a reference to the next meeting being 2013, I think, or was it 2012? Next meeting of the Council of Mosques, he would raise the question, which he did raise, but then he was talked out of it by an individual council employee called Hiramia. Hiramia said that that's not important. Now we shall come to discussing more about Hiramia and why Hiramia thought that discussing the vandalization and criminal attacks on the huge world-class, world-exclusive archives was not important. Essentially, what the evidence of Tower Hamlets Council's behavior shows is that this is not just confined to the corruption, the lack of regard for children's safety is not confined to one of Rochdale Borough Council. It is widespread, and it is to be found in every local council in England, everywhere. You can go to Lambeth and look at the history. You can go to Haringey and you can look at the history of the child neglect by the local councils. And you will find that Tower Hamlets was not a one-off. It was actually neglecting these three children, Shamima Begum and her two friends from the Bethnal Green School. When they were reported first time by the British mainstream in February 2015, it turned out that they were from Tower Hamlets that had gone into Syria. Now, these children were children at that time, and they had been children over the period of the grooming. Now, it was, of course, a different kind of grooming, only slightly different grooming, because essentially it appeared that when Shamima Begum arrived there in Syria, the only activity that she was got involved in was having sex. What a grotesque kind of state to be cast in. So this girl, Shamima Begum, was being actually groomed for a different kind of sexual exploitation. And Tower Hamlets Council was neglecting her rights and her plight and the way that she was being manipulated over several years since Lutfur Rahman became elected in October 2010. Because look at the date. 2010 is when Lutfur Rahman was elected mayor. And Shamima Begum and her two friends were reported to be in Syria in February 2015. That is 6 calendar years. So what was Lutfur Rahman and Lutfur Rahman fronted Tower Hamlets Council doing in upholding safeguarding the children duties? Safeguarding the children duties apply to all the local councils, as the local councils urgent, emergency, main, important obligation and duty to children. Safeguard the children, safeguard the vulnerables. What were So if you extrapolate that behavior and look at Rochdale and the other Greater Manchester boroughs, you can find the similar tendency that they don't give a shit. There is, of course, a safeguarding children duty, but the council, the local council concerned, which is supposed to safeguard the children, doesn't give a shit. So this is the background, this is the context, this is the actual kind of factual framework on which the baby angel Geronimo manifesto for animals is going to be constructed. And we shall be continuing updating on all of this. Ending this part B, hopefully after 45 minutes of broadcast. If there is any interruption, it is to do with the technical problems we are having. And we shall be continuing.